risk of trying to be all in one area. We like to have a little bit multiple options. We're even starting to look at some self-storage as another class that we see some opportunities in.
Welcome to the Next Level Income Show, where it's our goal to take your income, your investments, and your life to the next level. I'm your host, Chris Larson. If you haven't yet, get a copy of our book for free at our website, nextlevelincome.com. That's www.nextlevelincome.com. Just click on the book link, and I'll even send you a copy if you put your address in. On today's show, we have Corey Peterson. Corey Peterson is the CEO and founder of Kahuna Investments. Corey has acquired over $250 million in real estate nationwide and raised over $100 million in private equity. He's the best-selling author of Copy Your Way to Success, Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. We're going to tell you how to get a free copy if you listen here today. And he hosts the Multifamily Legacy podcast. His company's mission is to partner with passive investors to create award-winning apartment communities families are proud to call home. Corey, great to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to talk to you. I think this has been an interesting year, 2023, and it's been tough to make deals work. We've really learned the pitfalls of some certain things that are out there. We're going to talk about all that as well as more. But first, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background. Well, I should say, I'd love to hear it again, but I'd love for you to share it with the audience here.
Yeah, well, so I got a really crazy story, and it's really a rags to riches story of starting. I used to be a used car salesman, and that kind of joking, just the worst kind of car salesman ever, I think. Then I met my wife, or my girlfriend, now my wife of 21 years, and she made me quit smoking, and she got me the right line. But it was really almost 22 years ago, and that's when my life changed forever. My mom was married to this man named Bruce, and I call him Bruce Wayne. He wasn't Batman, but he did have a lot of money. And we go to Kauai, the Garden Island in Hawaii, and he had a house right on the beach. And Bruce had time and money. A lot of us have one, and not very, very, very few of us have both. He had them both, and it was different. And so I had to ask him, what did he do? That's what he said, the magic words. He said he was in real estate and they owned apartments. And so I left that island thinking that Bruce was the big kahuna, he had it going on. And, shortly after, about 3 months later, I read the little purple book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was like, oh my God, Bruce is a real estate investor.
Yeah.
And Bruce was self-made. And I thought if he could do it, I could do it. And so in 2005, I was like, I'm ready to do it. What do I call my company? And I called it Kahuna Investments. I wanted to be the big kahuna like Bruce. He's
the big kahuna. You're just kahuna, right?
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I started off in the family space because that's where I think a lot of us initially start.
Yeah.
But here's what I realized real quickly was there's no scalability. And if you're only flipping for profits, you are a trader. You're not true to the cash flow idea, and you're definitely paying a lot more taxes than you're supposed to. And so I had to really change my model. And so it took me a minute, but in 2011 is when we bought our apartment. And not trying to shorten the story here, but in the single family space, I learned how to raise because I was, 2009, 2010, there was no money to get out there. So you had to get creative and learn how to raise private money from investors. And so we learned that we had to have a pitch deck, before and after. We had to be able to sell our story. And so we did that in the single family space. But the only problem is it's 6 months, give me your money, I'll take it, they give it back, and then we got to find another deal.
Yeah.
And there was just no scalability to it. So once we drove by an apartment complex, and I used to say, I wish I could own an apartment. And on this day, I said, how can I? And that's really when the whole world of apartments really opened up to me. And so I went and got smart on it. I found a mentor and then really a lot of times the mentor is the key. And found someone to teach me the game and how to underwrite, how to model success, right? And in 2011, we bought our first deal, $2 million, raised $1.4 million. And Chris, we kept that deal for 5 years. And I sold it for $8.8 million.
Nice.
And so now we own $250 million of commercial real estate all across the United States. We've raised over almost $100 million of private equity. And it's an amazing story. And it's like anything else. If you put your mind to anything long enough and consistently enough, you can find success. And really, there's lots of ways to make additional cash flow and revenue. And you know, in your show, I'm sure a lot of are listening to this are investors. You know, they have money, and they, you know, what do I do with it? And I just know I was a formerly financial advisor, so I come from that game a little bit, and I can tell you all the dirty stories that brokers really talk about when you're not there. But the truth is, they don't really care about your money, and there's not as many levers. Right when the market crashed, I was a financial advisor. When the market crashed 2007, 8, 9, and all I could say was, "Well, it's the market." And here I thought I was being a great financial advisor to people, but I really realized I had no control. And that's why I love real estate, is because we have so many more levers when, you know, COVID happens, or, you know, interest rates right now, they're doubling, you know, double in value. Yeah. And so we had to like get lean. We, you know, look at our staffing, make sure our supply chain is very efficient. There's levers that we can move and manipulate to make sure that we get to the next greener pastures. And I think that's why I love what the power of real estate does.
No, it's a fantastic story. And Corey, you don't know this, but I heard your story like 5 years ago before we met initially. And I was like, wow. And I'll never forget that. So when your team reached out and we got connected, I was like, oh, this is fantastic. I can't wait to have Corey on the podcast to tell the story again. Cause it's really like you talked about Bruce. It's almost like when I heard your story, I was like, that's like Rich Dad, Poor Dad in real life for Corey.
It was. Really, it was so, you know, it's a way of, you know, the way the universe works. But like from that moment on, that's when my life changed. Is like something different had come in. And for me, I had a real live mentor that I could see, that I could touch. And for that, it made it way more realer for me. And it's led to a lot of success.
No, I love that. And you said a few things in there that I think are so important and really not only exemplify why you're successful, but you know, how anybody that, if you're listening today, you should take this in mind. So one of my favorite books is something that my wife gave me. It's called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And actually my younger son happens to be reading it. And he talks about, if you believe something with all your heart and all your mind, the universe will conspire, we'll get together. That's what conspire means, to get together to make it happen. And that same son, he wants to learn how to do a backflip, Corey. So we take him to the local gymnastics place this past weekend. And, you know, he knows the mechanics of a hamstring. Handspring. And so he kind of knows like how to do it, but he's never done a back handspring or a backflip. And the coach says, oh, can you do this? And he goes, I can't do that. And he said, you don't know how to do it yet. And, you know, I loved how you said, what changed for me was the day I asked, how can I? And if you're listening and you want to make something happen, there's a lot of people in your life that'll say, oh, you can't do that. Or, you know, I remember, you know, we're about to, we have a mobile home park under contract. And I'll never forget telling my wife's aunt one time about, I was like, I'm going to buy mobile homes. And she said, that's crazy. Like, you want to get shot? You know, this is, you know, all the reasons why we shouldn't do it. And I was like, well, what's the right way to do it? And for you having that Bruce in your life, you know, really allowed you to do that. And that's why we do this show, is so people can listen. You know, if you're listening today, you can hear, you know, Corey's story of going.
There's clues. There's so Absolutely. Many clues, Chris, in stuff like that. And what I've learned to my lesson is, I don't listen from broke people, right? And I know that sounds kind of crude, but like, if I wanted to learn how to buy, you know, what you just said, mobile home parks, I would find one that was in mobile home parks at a very high level. Yeah. And I would say, what do you do that's successful? What do you don't do? Right. And then just model it. Right. Like, that's really the success formula, is find someone that's doing where you want to go, and then copy it. Yeah. And when you do it, you do it long enough, then you can finally, once you've mastered the model, that's when you sprinkle your special sauce. You do the Salt Bay on it a little
Salt
bit,
Bay, yeah.
right? And you start kind of making your own unique recipe
Yeah.
to what already works. And
Yeah.
it's funny, but even money investing, like when I think about investors out there that were in just the stock market, they had a financial advisor.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage to step out from that and say, I'm going to do something different that every financial advisor would poop on. And the reason they're going to poop on it because they don't really know.
They don't.
Right.
Yeah. And it's scary, right? If you're, I like to say, it's like my wife, she was talking about, we were talking about teaching the boys how to use a firearm. And, it was intimidating for her because she didn't grow up around guns. And I said, listen, sweetheart, I said, and I may be triggering, no pun intended, people that are listening, but I said, hey, if I told you, hey, hop in the car, get in my car and drive the boys to school and you'd never driven before, I said, would you be nervous that you might hurt them? And she said, absolutely. I said, so you go out, you learn how to drive, you go to an instructor, you do all these things. Anxiety comes from ignorance. And the more we can educate ourselves and ask, how can I, that does that. The other dirty secret, which Corey, from being in the financial industry is, and I know this because some of our investors have told me this that are financial advisors. They say, well, Chris, I'm actually prohibited from investing in these per my contract. So not only can I not tell my clients about it, but I can't even invest in these either because they're salespeople and they're selling away. No different than when I was in the medical device space. If a surgeon said to me, Chris, what product should I use? And I recommended my competitor's product, I would get fired because that's not my job.
There's a rule with financial advisors. You can only sell what your broker or your broker dealer allows you to sell.
Yeah.
And it really is called selling away. And it's interesting when you look at it from that sales lens that they're coming from, and they will never tell you. They'll say, that sounds risky. Are you sure you want to do that? But the truth is, most financial advisors are pitching 6 to 8% returns.
Yeah. And look, that's not terrible in certain circumstances.
It's not.
But the fact of the matter is, you just said, hey, learn from somebody that has done it.
You can take some matters in your own hands and get together, find smart people. Listening to this podcast is one of those steps, right? Yeah. Of educating yourself in the ways of money. And because rich people tend to want a little bit more control, at least when I look around. And when you get super wealthy, you become a family office and you hire people to watch your money, right? And they don't go in the stock market. They have people that actually make that money and make the investments themselves. And so a lot of times with syndications of what we do in the side, it's kind of like, it's almost like taking that concept, but allowing you to do it in fractionalized piece, right?
Absolutely. And that's been our mission, is to help bring, those institutional assets that have been reserved typically, for the institutions, for the endowments, for the private, or the family offices, bring them to every person. Because when I heard about it, I was like, just like you, Red Rich Dad Poor, I was like, I got to become accredited. I got to get access to these special investments. Now, Corey, you started in multifamily just like I did. You beat me to it by a couple of years, certainly. And you've learned a lot here. We were chatting here before the show. You've learned a lot over the past dozen or so years in that space. And a big part of your portfolio now is student housing. I know listeners are familiar with multifamily and different things, but maybe we don't talk a ton about student housing. And I know there's a lot of heads that are like you, that are shaking like, you should, Chris, because I'm paying tuition at these schools. Yeah. Once
you get to the age your kids turn 18,
you're
going to find out about student housing real quick.
Yeah, which is funny because I bought my first 2 townhouses in Blacksburg, Virginia, and I rented 5 of the 6 bedrooms out to students. So I actually got my start in student housing, if you really think about it.
And it's funny because you're in Blacksburg and you have a property right away down the road at Radford University. So yes,
I probably was in that. I may have even been in that property at some time or another during my time there. But
so I'll tell you why I love student housing is
Yep.
it's a little bit more work as far as there's a lot of more moving parts. You're dealing with college kids. But here's the beauty of it is mom and dad co. So, I mean, think about it. And I'm not saying that it's resilient from market cycles, but it kind of is. Now, it's not COVID resistant because when COVID happened, no one went to college. And so our housing model got broke for a minute. It's been a hard couple years.
Well,
We are now finally recovered.
So let's hit on that real quick. Sorry to kind of twist the knife a little bit, but so we all, everybody in the multifamily space saw, the restrictions with collecting rent and doing these things. How did that work in the student housing space, Corey?
It was brutal. We went from 100% occupancy to 45.
Wow.
That's a death sentence, by the way, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is why I love real estate. We immediately got skinny. I mean, abnormally skinny. And when I say that, I'm talking about we stopped ordering anything, like no orders, cut staff in half, almost to a third on some properties. Put a skeleton crew to get through because, now on my bigger schools, were bigger colleges, still had more tenants. It was more like 75, 80.
Okay.
But on your D2, your D2, smaller D2 schools that have 8,000 students or so, those are where I saw my biggest hits. Like they just stopped going altogether and it was just vacant. And it lasted for 2 years. This year it was great. This year we killed it. And my big schools, they rebounded the year after, right? Okay. It was better. But other than that, and what I did, so I've learned that when there's blood in the streets is when you buy. So what did I do during COVID? I doubled down. Yeah. I bought 4 more properties in student housing because you buy the pain. And but I do love about the student side is that mom and dad personally guarantee their 12-month leases, even though school is usually only 9. Right. And then I think my properties keep me young. I love it is way more fast paced. And so my staff and my team and the touches, it's just a different animal, but it's so much fun. And the right properties fill up on their own. Like we have a property in East Carolina, ECU, right? North Carolina, Greenville, and it will fill up regardless of kind of what we do. And last year we got a 6% increase in rents. Didn't do anything. And we're probably going to get another 6% this year. And we're not going to do anything besides raise the rents and say, here's the new price. Yeah. And we'll still fill up. And so it's a beautiful business. But the only so that's the great things. The downside is, kids tend to be a little more violent on your properties, right?
Yeah, a little less respectful, right?
So we're very good at drywall repair, right? Very drywall repair. I'm not saying that there's lots of holes. Most of the kids are respectful, but we've seen holes in walls. We've seen some people get a little, they get pulled up on the alcohol. So it's really about trying to control your parties. We don't want to be the party place. Right. Yeah. And mom and dad are usually trying to, we have cameras everywhere. So big brother's always watching. That's one of the things we really do. And then we try to, our recipe is to light these things up like Christmas trees. 75% of our students are women. And so you want to keep your property as safe as possible.
I've got to think that's a testament to the quality of your property, because I would assume that if I was a parent of a daughter, I have 2 boys. If I was a parent of a daughter, I would say, hey, I want to be in one of Corey's properties because they're well lit, they're safe, whereas if I had a boy, maybe it's not quite as much of a. Today's show is sponsored by Money Insights and their investment optimizer strategy. In my book, I share how I used this same strategy starting over a decade ago to invest my money in 2 places at one time. This strategy has been used by the wealthiest for generations for estate planning, minimizing taxes, preserving wealth, and increasing stability for their investments. Now you can do the same thing. In addition, you can build a plan to build an emergency fund, pay for college, fund a business, plan for retirement, and ultimately optimize your total financial picture. To find out more information, check us out at the banking link at nextlevelincome.com.
You don't think about it. You don't think about it as much, right? But like, just know that that's a big piece of the recipe. Is like when we go buy one, we'll look at the lighting. We're like, are they bright LEDs? Is it the right Kelvin? Right? Believe it or not, we look at Kelvin.
Yeah.
And
believe
look
it or not,
at
I know what that is.
Yeah. Because then we're looking for areas that are spooky. And we say, how do we put some light over there? Right. And because and when we do things, right? So we've taken over properties that they have, like in the breezeways, they have incandescent lights. We put these really bright LEDs that spread up a very white light.
Yeah.
It goes from, oh God, that's kind of scary, to, oh, I can come here at night. And then you start seeing, and I mean, because some of these people, they're just oblivious to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you just want to make them feel as safe as possible. The other thing too is we're trying to, if we put gates around stuff, we do, or we'll put like, we try to restrict the ways and ins and outs of ingress, and we'll put cameras at license plate level, right? So, try to do as much as we can to limit the shenanigans, right? Because it's really not your tenants that come in, it's their boyfriends that come in and try to screw things up for us.
Yeah, it's interesting. We see the same thing in the self-storage space as technology has come in. People, especially female renters, would prefer not to interact with some weirdo that's watching, Netflix or something else on their, laptop at the front desk. They can do everything via a kiosk or via an app. They can get onto the property. There's a gate. There's lots of lights. There's lots of cameras and security, and that makes people feel safe, right? It's natural to do that.
Even then, like we work on even trying to get keyless systems where we have they have a card to get in their door. It's kind of like trying to go to the hotel model, and access points within our the places where they can get into the gym, to our common areas and things like that. So. It really is way more technical than it used to be, but it's a beautiful business. And the great thing is they're not going now. Colleges overall are downsizing a little bit, right? Some of the smaller ones, the bigger schools though seem to just keep getting bigger.
Yeah, so, I was going to ask you about that, Corey. So as I'm always looking for things that are going to like disintermediate an industry, right? It's like, all right, how are you going to come in and wipe out housing? Like what technology is going to wipe out housing? It's hard for me to see that. From a university perspective, as tuition keeps rising, people are like, oh, your son's going to go to college. I'm like, well, my younger son wants to be an engineer. So I'm like, hey, he's probably going to go to college. My older son, he wants to play lacrosse. So hopefully he gets a scholarship, but he actually would really like to go into the military. Yeah. But as students have more online options, as degrees have become more ubiquitous and possibly less valuable, right? Or even some employers are saying, well, you don't even need a degree anymore, which is kind of crazy. What are your thoughts on that with respect to the markets that you're in, and how do you kind of guard against that?
So what we've learned from being now in it is, so when we first started, we bought very smaller markets, and have managed those. You have to manage those very tight and very efficiently. And we can talk about efficiencies here in a bit, but that's something we've really worked on. But so we like bigger schools. We like 25,000 students. 20,000 to 25,000 students is a good school size, and then closest to the college as possible, right? So because what's going to go away first? The properties that are farther away from campus, right? Yeah. So, and then we're looking for some historical trends. We usually look at, is the college going up or down? If you look over a 10-year history, a trend. The bigger colleges just trend is real steady, and go up. Sometimes they might have a down year, but it's not, or if it's flat. So flat's okay.
Okay.
Our smaller colleges, what we've seen is a slow downward trend. The smaller
Interesting.
colleges
Yeah.
seem to keep getting smaller.
Hmm.
That's been a really concern. So some of those assets we're now looking to exit when it's the right, make the right sense, and we
Yeah.
want to get out of those earlier than later. Um, and it's just about really trying to manage that a little bit. But
Yeah.
on our bigger schools, I don't see for our 5-year horizon, not a whole lot's going to change. People are still going to go to school. Not everyone's going to go to college, but the ones that do still need a place to stay.
Right.
And so you're just trying to make sure that you're not in oversaturated markets like College Station, even though that's a big school, right? You've just got to make sure. So it's really about understanding what the supply and demand is, what is the enrollment trends, and then you're looking for a deal, right? So we're looking at a deal right now in Savannah, Georgia, or Statesboro, which is real close to Savannah. Yeah. And it's a 20,000 kid school. It's not D1, I don't believe, but it's a good large D2 school.
Yeah.
So we that there's value to play in that game, and then the only other difference I think from the downside of student housing is you are still subject to things that could go on beyond your control, like something happens terrible at the college or they get a bad reputation, right? Like I'm thinking of something that happened to Mizzou about maybe it was like 9 years ago in Missouri State or whatever. They had somebody make some kind of claim or like, I can't remember what it was. It was like Black Lives Matter. I can't remember what it was, but it was a big deal. And donors left the football. It was a big deal. And the next year, new enrollment plummeted.
How about that?
Right?
Yeah, interesting.
So you're subject to some things you can't control.
Yeah, and that's probably a reason why you look for, big D1 schools, big D2 schools. You see success in their football programs. You see enrollment skyrocket like we've seen here in Knoxville.
Yep. Everyone wants to be part of that trend, right? Now, and then we sprinkle that with just regular old multifamily. So I think we're about 65, maybe 70% to the student in our portfolio. We're looking to try to balance that back out. We'd like to be 50-50, right? Because I think the risk of trying to be all in one area. We like to have a little bit multiple options. We're even starting to look at some self-storage as another class that we see some opportunities in.
Yeah, no, I like that. And look, I love hearing the high level stuff, Corey, but coming out of COVID, you mentioned how you guys have kept turning the screws on efficiencies and operations, which really, those are really the things that make a difference in these investments, long term after you get into them. If you would share some of the lessons that you've learned with the audience and, how your company has restructured or evolved, so to speak, here post-COVID to really take advantage of some of these efficiencies.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. So when we first started, we were we would hire third party property management all the time on all assets. And that's how most operators generally do it. Here's the problem is third-party management is not aligned with any owner-operator's goals. And the reason for that is they're not compensated based on NOI, net operating income. They're based on collected rents, top line, right? So they could care less how they spend the money. They just want to make sure they collect all of it, right? And so as we got into this, and we, time and time again, what is your most valuable asset at any property? It's your people.
Yeah.
And so what we realized is we're actually in the people business. That's what we do. We sell a product called real estate, but it's the people that make it work and run. And so the challenge with third-party management companies is we were not in control of our staff, the people, culture, and the way we wanted things to run efficiently. And so this year, 2023, we decided to take control of that. And so we vertically integrated by creating our own property management company. Now, what we've through that is that, your people do make the difference, right? when we start talking about NOIs, net operating income, budgets, real budgets. Oh, can I spend this? I don't know. What does the budget tell you? Right. And going and then having flying off staff and getting everybody to what I call Kahuna-fied, right? The Kahuna way. It's so important because it builds teamwork, friendship, connection, and that we're all doing it together. So what we found was with property management companies, third-party property management companies, every property was its own island. And none of our properties were really connected, even though we're all in student housing. No one was talking to each other. And so we were able to bridge that gap through when we took over. We brought, we have used Slack, we have Zoom calls all the time. We have all our staff on it, right? And we're able to be so much more efficient in just doing it one way for every property, right? Instead of trying to do it 5 different, because a lot of times on bigger asset managers, you're going to have different property managers, different ways. This one's doing it this way, another one's doing it that way, and it's not coherent, it's not the same, and there's no cohesiveness.
Right.
And that leads to a lot of inefficiencies, right? And then even supply chain, right? Now that we're under one umbrella, we can get our painting cheaper, our products cheaper, trying to use the same, vendors and the same supply everything. Like, here's our toilet, here's, like we start having codes for each thing. And then we say, and then really it's about kind of Six Sigma efficiencies, just in time ordering, meaning we don't keep a lot of stuff on the shelves, right? Someone's going to go vacant. We go, we usually know 60, 90 days a property's going to vacate, right? Or they're going to non-renew, or we have to evict. Even if we're evicting, all right, let's send this guy, let's get inside that unit. And then he comes up and says, okay, I need, a toilet bar, for the toilet vanity. I need this, I need that. And then, do I have these products on the shelf? No, let's just order just what I need for these 3 units or 2 units or whatever it is. And, we have a 24-hour or 48-hour turn policy. We want to have something back on the market within 2 days.
Boom. Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to be way more proactive and getting into these units, and even sometimes doing the repairs before they actually move out.
Yeah.
And again, efficiencies like that, getting your having, and this is the biggest killer in multifamily. This is a big killer, is not having rent ready product.
Yep.
Yeah, and having a property, not turned.
Yeah.
It'll kill your business model.
Yeah. No, I love that. Bruce, I'm sorry. I've been wanting to say that the whole time. Corey. So Corey, it's been a fun conversation. I know we could continue on, and we'll have to have you back on to talk about some different stuff. But love for you to share with the audience how they can I know you got a book out, you got a great podcast, and there's ways that listeners can learn a little bit about your investment.
I would love just to give your audience a gift. We talked about it earlier, but Copy Your Way to Success. I wrote a book
awesome.
called Copy, and if you guys will just text the word book to 480-500-1127. So text the word book, 480-500-1127. My team will send you this book for free. And we just ask that you read a couple chapters and see and learn our story, because it's really my rags to riches story, from having that moment in Bruce to really the whole success. And there's lots of clues and lots of nuggets to what it looked like and how we did it.
I love that. So just one more time for the audience, text book to 480-500-1127. Is that right?
That's it. Yep, that's it.
All right. We got that here in the show notes, along with kahunainvestments.com. If you want to get a hold of Corey, check out the background on his company or learn more about his investments. Corey, thank you so much for sharing your story and your rags to riches in true life with the audience.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey, Chris here again. I hope you found this episode valuable. Now, I have one more thing to gift you. We have a page for my coaching clients where you can get a free copy of my book, as well as much more from previous guests on the show. Just check out nextlevelincome.com/coaching to get a free copy of my book, audiobook, and much more. I'll send you a copy of my book and cover all the shipping costs as a thank you for listening to the podcast. Also, please like, share, and take just 90 seconds to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts.